You're listening to Robinson Ventures Radio, where ingenuity meets innovation. Today's guest is Dr. Frazier of Obatala Sciences. In West African mythologies, Obatala is believed to be the god tasked with sculpting the human body. Accurately named as such, Obatala and Dr. Frazier have committed to creating a more accurate models of human tissue, starting with the building blocks of life itself, the cells.
Good afternoon, good morning, whenever you're listening. Thank you for joining Robinson Ventures Radio. My name is Cian Robinson. I'm the president of Robinson Ventures. With me today is my son Tucker, who will be helping us moderate the podcast. And our very special guest is Dr. Frazier. Dr. Frazier is the CEO of Obatala Sciences. And so, Dr. Frazier, would you introduce yourself to everybody who's listening today?
Yes, my name is Frazier. I'm the president, co-founder, and CEO of Obatala Sciences. I'm sure we're going to dive into more specific aspects about, who we are, but I am a New Orleans native that is excited about biotechnology here in New Orleans, growing it, contributing to it, growing the ecosystem here within New Orleans and within Louisiana and throughout the Southeast region of the country.
So, Dr. Frazier, can you give us a little bit of your background and origination story about how you got started and why you're in the bio-life sciences?
Yes, absolutely. My story starts off as a young girl learning that my mother was suffering from a disease called Paget's disease. All that I would remember in terms of observing her suffer with this disease is that she would be in a lot of pain and she couldn't attend many of the activities that I wanted to go to, extracurricular activities, that kind of thing. But I just felt so bad seeing my mother suffer. It took her about 10 years to get an accurate diagnosis. And the attending physician at Charity Hospital told her, he was a visiting researcher and physician scientist from India. He told her, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry that it has taken us so long to diagnose this, but the reality is we're not used to seeing this type of disease present within African American women and within anyone that's under the age of 50. And so it's more commonly diagnosed in males of European descent that are older than 50. So an aging disease is what it was considered to be. And that sparked my curiosity. The first question was why, how did this happen? There obviously has to be some genetic component here. And at that age, I didn't even know what genetics was. But then that inspired me to learn more about the human body. That also was a drive for me to understand the value and importance of incorporating diversity into research as I matriculated through my research career. What we do at Obatala is all about promoting diversity in research because of that.
And so, Dr. Frazier, you started off at what institution, then what institution followed after that and after that? So give us a little bit of background there.
So I started out taking physics in high school. I fell in love with it. I always say physics was my first love, oddly enough, and I proudly wear that. I'm like, I started out loving physics because no one told me how difficult it was. My teacher was just like, y'all should get this. It's common sense. Just the way she was explaining the mathematical formulas, not everything.
Right.
And so I started out at Dillard University, HBCU. I attended Dillard and received my bachelor's degree in physics. And I did the dual degree program between Dillard and Tulane universities. And so that's basically 3 years of physics or core science, and then 2 years in engineering. So I got my bachelor's degrees in biomedical engineering through that dual degree program at Tulane in 2008. And then during that time, I was introduced to research and fell in love with stem cell research because of all those fundamentals that I had been exposed to in my personal life. And I pursued my doctorate in biomedical sciences from Tulane at the School of Medicine. I didn't stop there.
Of course not.
That would be too easy.
I went on to get my master's in business administration, focusing in finance and globalization from Tulane's A.B. Freeman School.
So you have this confluence of physics, bio-life sciences, and an MBA, and that said to you, yeah, I need to start a company. So at what point in time did the level of more difficult get there? What made you say, okay, now I got to do this?
Yeah, because I didn't have enough on my plate.
No, not at all. Not only are you doing all this, right? But how many boys do you have under the age of what?
Yes, I have three boys. My oldest just turned 11, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And yeah, so I got married in graduate school. We had our three boys throughout each of my graduate school training programs.
Oh
And
my
then
goodness.
decided, you know what? That's not enough. I think I want to start a business.
Right, right. So you're boy mom to three highly, I'm sure they're very calm, like don't cause chaos whatsoever, like little boys that hang around the house, right?
Well, like we were
Yeah.
when my brother and I
Uh,
were growing up.
right. So trivia, I could tell you it gets better because eventually they turn 24 and 20 and then they leave. But the great thing is when they do leave, right, they actually become productive human beings. And it's just one of those moments you're proud as a dad to sit there and say, hey, look, it wasn't like it seems like chaos now, but I'm telling you, it won't be. And
It's a long-term project, not a nothing short-term here.
so Dr. Frazier, you're going through you're doing postdoc work too, right?
Yes, yes.
And what was that in?
I did a postdoctoral fellowship in stem cell biology and tissue engineering at Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Baton Rouge. And then also I did it's essentially a second postdoc at Tulane University. I went on to become a faculty member at tenure track faculty member at Delgado first in the chemistry department. And then I went on to become a assistant professor of research at Dillard, teaching physics. I ended
Full
up being a
circle there, right? Full
chair.
circle.
Yep, full
Oh,
circle.
you
Full
ended
circle.
up being the chair?
Yes, the chair of the physics department at physics at Dillard. And then I decided I wanted to see this research at the bench be commercialized. I wanted to see what would happen if we tried to take this research to patients, like really use this to help people. How could we do that? What would that look like?
So what is this stuff that you were doing at the bench? How could you explain it like easy peasy for those who are listening?
Yes, yes. So there's a couple ways I do it. I explain it. One way is if everyone has seen Avatar, which the new movie Avatar is coming out soon. If everyone, our listeners have looked at that movie Avatar, we essentially make miniaturized avatars of people. We take their DNA, their stem cells, and we mix it with these nice biomaterials, these materials that are flexible like Jello. And then
Mm-hmm.
we use that to regenerate tissue that mimics that person. And that's essentially for us to perform drug screening and drug discovery within the human without testing on a human subject. That's one way to describe it. And, the other way is just we make little miniaturized models of people. And so if you envision stem cells or people within apartment complexes, there are people who go about their lives, they live in their own little apartment, and the stem cells do the same thing. And the apartment complex is this whole system that we've created that mimics the body.
Let me get this right. So where do you get the stem cells from? I understand it's adipose tissue.
So we essentially get discarded medical waste. There's routinely discarded medical waste from liposuction surgeries, from orthopedic surgery. So when someone goes in to get a knee replacement, for example, or a hip replacement, usually that tissue is just thrown away. And not only that, but the physician who does the surgery has to pay for that material to be discarded properly. Well, we're telling them, don't pay for it to be incinerated. We'll pay your staff to get patient informed consent, to let the patient, to inform the patient that this is research that they're contributing to advancing society. Give us that tissue, and we get the stem cells from the fat, the bone, and the bone marrow. We use those stem cells as a starting material. Now, the beauty about that is that these cells represent patients that they're harvested from. So they represent patients from different ages, ethnicities, racial backgrounds, genders, various backgrounds. And so we have a biobank of patients of varying demographics that we're using to mimic tissue.
So why is that so important? And to me, do two things for us. Why is that so important? And then how does that connect back to how you started this conversation and the why?
Yes, yes, that is absolutely so important for a number of reasons. One is that lack of data that is there in terms of awareness about how patients from different genders respond to therapies, different ages, the racial ethnic backgrounds. Historically, the data that has been accumulated from patients in clinical trials has been very heavily within the male population or people within a very narrow age range. There are some studies that incorporate more diversity, but it's nowhere near the level of diversity we need to have.
So let me be very direct and blunt. White, male, older.
Yep.
Okay. And so right. And so, and P.S., I resemble that remark these days. Right. And so how does that type of profile even create an efficacious drug for a female African American, over the age of 50?
It doesn't
Right.
translate one iota.
Right.
And, we're just scratching the surface of trying to understand the level of complexity that is involved in the lack of response, the adverse effects, the impact when you see a patient that doesn't respond to a therapeutic that has been FDA approved, that's on market, and there are these bad side effects for which there's an entire classification and we don't understand why. When we look historically at birth control pills, the fact that 84% of that data was generated within males from a clinical standpoint, that is
No,
ridiculous.
that falls into just counterintuitive almost too, right? So trivia. So again, come back around to your why. I mean, you started
Yes,
off with your mom, right?
yes. So the link there, the connection there, which is so amazing. And this is the world that I love to live in, the world that we're supporting, that we're growing towards. The physician told my mother directly, we just don't have enough information. We don't know why or how this happens, in terms of a young Black woman in New Orleans getting diagnosed with a disease that's prevalent in Europe in older males. Okay, so now let's take it another step further. He prescribed her an osteoarthritis drug because they didn't know how to treat this. Okay, younger women, Black women have lower vitamin D in terms of just an inherent amount compared to white males. If he would have known that, he would have prescribed her a different medication. The other physicians would have prescribed a different medication just to treat the symptoms, let alone diagnose what was going on. And so that lack of data when it comes to how to different populations, how they respond to different therapies, that is what's coming full circle. We are now giving greater insight into why we need to include women and minorities in these studies to better get a grasp of what's going on with our bodies. Then when people like my mother present with symptoms, present with a disease, the physician can say, oh, we know about 75 to 80% of patients in this age bracket, this background, they are deficient in this particular vitamin. And as a result, they respond differently to this therapeutic. So I won't give you this one because it'll cause negative side effects.
Right.
I'll give you another option. It's just that beauty of us feeling seen and heard, people from various backgrounds.
And so, Dr. Frazier, now talk about taking that very passionate, oriented with your mother. You do all of this work. You've started this company, and now what is the product called, and what is it used for?
Yes. So we use these stem cells. We sell the stem cells, but this biomaterial that we use to culture those cells in 3 dimensions is called the hydrogel, called Obagel. And when we mix the stem cells and Obagel together, we get this fat on a chip. The fat on the chip resembles the patients of specific backgrounds. We provide that to pharmaceutical companies, to researchers who are basically testing their therapies, testing new formulations, and looking for safety, efficacy, indications of cytotoxicity. Is this going to cause adverse effects? Getting more insight into that a little bit earlier in the process. So why would the bad drugs even make it down the pipeline? We can just eliminate them by using our system, our screening tool. And we're offering that to pharmaceutical researchers around the world. Some of the top research institutions within metabolic disease research, because our core expertise is within obesity, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, metabolic diseases that plague, unfortunately, the minority populations so much greater than others.
Okay. And so when they place their order, so this pharmaceutical company researcher says, I want what, right? So I want Obagel, but then they go, I want Obagel for a African American female over the age of 50 who are BRCA1, BRCA2 positive. Is that the
Yes.
way they're able to place their order?
Yes, they literally say we want to screen our compounds, these formulations, these concentrations in 10 donors. We want all of them to be female, or half of them to be female, half of them to be male, all this age and this racial ethnic background.
So
And that kind of insight.
So so to me, I'm like, okay, the combination of permutation. So I'm getting back to the mathematical equations you were talking about at the very beginning, albeit not physics. Now we're moving into statistics, right? Where you're sitting here and saying, how many lines do you have stored? And that's got to be amazingly complex.
Yes, it absolutely is. And as complex as it is, having thousands of vials of cells from patients all over the United States, there still is a chance for a customer to ask for something that we don't have. Like that happens.
Right.
As you're indicating, the permutations are extensive, right? So we look at over 800 donors in terms of an initial selection to say, okay, we'll pull from that inventory. Here are donors that fit the profile of interest. And if there is a desire to extend beyond that, we can build a contract. What that looks like is entities that we work with will target specific times, dates, those types of things that can give specific types of tissue. Yeah, they say we want Obacel and we want to screen our compound in donors that have this profile.
These cells you get, you don't have to keep going back. You get them once, but then you keep growing and culturing them and growing them and culturing them, because once you have that line, you have that line. So it's not like you have to keep going. Okay.
What about New Orleans prompted you to start in New Orleans instead of, taking it to, a tech hub city, you go to Dallas or Atlanta or somewhere like that? Like, what about New Orleans made you want to start and be concentrated and headquartered there?
Graduating from Tulane, biomedical engineering, about half of my class went to medical school and 25% of my class went to graduate school. The other 25% went to work in tissue engineering or biomedical engineering companies. They went out of state. And I wanted to work. I was in that 25% that wanted to go to work, but I didn't want to leave New Orleans. There were no opportunities for me to work in biomedical engineering, in industry, more specifically in tissue engineering, in New Orleans. And so a part of the why for me is also creating opportunity for people who were just like younger trivia. There's so many bright minds here. What we're experiencing is a brain drain. We've been experiencing that for so long because of the lack of opportunities for people who really have gone through this specialized training and really training in business as well, but they want to be connected to a science, but there aren't as many opportunities outside of academia. And so that's a part of the reason why I ended up matriculating through academia, because I thought that was all I could do. Loving New Orleans, staying here locally. The other part was loving the interaction with people. And so that was a contribution. The other was wanting to stay close to my family. New Orleans has this special hold on people that I'm sure you can speak to, Sin. But
Yes,
I do love New Orleans truly, in a sense that I see the opportunity, again, not just for students who are matriculating through these wonderful programs, but also for the economy here to grow and improve, and for Louisiana to then not be ranked number one in obesity and type 2 diabetes and its impact on our citizens, our people.
And so thank you, Tucker. That's a great lead-in question to the question that I asked, which is, I mean, how hard is it being in New Orleans, African American, female, biotech? I mean, going out and raising money to start your company, when everybody else who's in your space is, as Tucker said, in tech hubs elsewhere. They're on one of the coasts. There might be a few in the middle, but man, I mean, how do you do it? How hard was it?
I will extend that to say how hard it was and how hard it continues to be.
Hmm.
Primarily because of where we are with respect to our venture community, with respect to the maturity of our biotechnology ecosystem, with respect to the number of institutions on the industry side that has these types of jobs. The stronger that ecosystem is, and the better it is in terms of, when we call it the flywheel, that's spinning and continuing to grow and contribute to the growth of an economy and a population. And so I think it's very difficult for me to articulate just how hard it was to raise money here in New Orleans, within Louisiana, and recognizing that the southeast part of the country has historically had more of a focus on oil and gas, on other, avenues that are so impactful, but not within biotechnology. And so it has been a tremendous help, a blessing, I will say, for us to link with people who understand, the value in what we're bringing forward. They understand that it goes beyond, yes, the dollar is there because we are making an impact and we're filling a gap and there's a need. So that dollar absolutely is going to be that return. But the value is also in the impact that we're making.
And so you get through your seed round, which was an interesting round. And for everybody out there, been involved with Dr. Frazier and Obatala for now probably pre-pandemic to today. So like 3 to 4 years is what I'm thinking,
Yes.
From the time we saw the opportunity to be part of the solution for your seed round, and then also participating in your Series A. But the fun part is it's still hard. The flywheel's moving, I think. And you actually got a coastal co-lead, right? So you got a San Francisco venture firm, Etre, to come in and make a placement in your Series A, which that is kind of unheard of.
Yes.
Where in Louisiana, let alone in New Orleans.
Yes, absolutely. Etre being, based in Silicon Valley, I'm always speaking to significance of meeting Jennifer Kwan, one of the partners, and Hillary at the time that we did. Timing was just quite crucial, but also how wonderful they are, because again, the values and this is the significance of the impact, they're aligned. And to meet a group, a fund out on the bay, their values are aligned with Obatala. It was just a match made in heaven, I think, but it's so rare to see that level of alignment, really make such an impact for us to close our Series A, to be at the stage by which we're selling our product all over the world. We just announced a partnership with a distribution partner in the UK and the EU. We have a distributor in Japan. We're selling our products in Singapore, and there are more to come very shortly. Right. And so this growth would not have happened really without the support of both the local partners, people like yourself, and our West Coast partners.
I think the brilliance behind it and that co-leading with Etre is, female fund focused on female CEOs and founders, right? And so they have that specific hyper focus, and they want to go look. They pride themselves not looking in the standard places. They pride themselves on going and finding the diamonds that you are, right? That you've created. Ochsner is a perfectly aligned strategic. You need adipose tissue to create your product. Well,
Yes.
guess what? There's just a few surgeries going on a daily basis over there. And you can reach out to their research department and say, hey, we just got an order for, female, Hispanic, age 50 with this, right? And they can go in and say, okay, who's inbound, right? Who's inbound is that fits that. And so you have this really unique strategic value prop that an auctioneer brings, as well as an Etre, and getting you out coastal. I mean, so you hear all this growth, right? You hear about your story, you hear about the product you've created. Now it's selling, and it's in Japan and Singapore and in the EU, and you're global, and you're selling at home, and now the flywheel's moving. So what's next?
Yes, yes. What's next is we're scaling up our manufacturing in New Orleans.
There we go.
That's right. We're scaling up manufacturing. We have a partnership with the University of New Orleans, more specifically the beach, a sandbox of research and collaboration.
Clever.
Yes, yes.
Yo, if anybody knows Louisiana, there are no beaches in Louisiana unless you you try to get to, I can't remember where you go down to, and it's like
I mean, the easiest way to get a beach in Louisiana is to wait for a hurricane and then rip open your sandbags.
Oh my goodness. UNO, so the beach is formerly the Research and Technology Park. And essentially what we're doing is we are tripling our manufacturing space, partnering with the UNO and the New Orleans Business Alliance through a $1.5 million awarded EDA grant to build out a clinical manufacturing site as well. So that will enable us to manufacture our current products as clinical grade materials to meet the needs of physicians who would like to use the materials that we're using for wound healing applications, or our current customers who are looking to advance their drugs to the next stage of development, the clinical stage.
So Obagel now has a dual marketplace, right? You sell into research, but you're also now making it as a wound care product.
Yes, and that was we stumbled into that. Of course, having Auctioneer as the perfect partner, but we stumbled into that application just by observing its impact on the stem cells that we were making these tissue models of. So, the stem cells love this material. They grow so robustly, and what we call vascularization, simulating a blood response or vascular response, it works so well within the material, and that's exactly what we need to elicit a wound healing response within the body.
And so are you sticking with the wound healing for the metabolic syndromes, or is this wound care across the board? Because for folks who don't know, like if you've got your type 1 or type 2 diabetes, you're going to get ulcers somewhere, right? It shows up, right? And so then you have to get into a wound care protocol. So are you sticking with the metabolic diseases, or is this like wound care broad spectrum?
Yeah, so this is going to end up as wound care broad spectrum because of the ability from a topical standpoint. We're focusing on diabetic foot ulcers, on pressure ulcers, because it's literally just as you've indicated, that is one of the areas for which there is such a big need. What happens though is when a product is clinically approved for a specific application, so it's going to be topical wound healing, a physician says, oh, wait, that works for this other application as an FDA approved product. And so it will end up being used topically in other applications. Our focus, though, is starting off with those diabetic foot ulcers, the metabolism research.
And so you're now going through the FDA approval process, which has got to be fun, right?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, my goodness. What's a question that I haven't asked you that I should have?
Oh, what flavor king cake do I like?
There's a correct answer here. Hold on. I want to know what she says.
I like a combination of fruit, so Bavarian cream and fruit, apple filled. So it's hard.
And where do you go get that? What's your go-to king cake location?
You know what?
The bakery.
I don't have a go-to. I love from the Roberts of the world to the Haydels of the world. Like I love king cake from any bakery that has that dual combination of fruit and cream.
I'm just gonna lean in here to represent the 337 and say shout out to Mesh's Donuts and their king cakes.
Oh,
Well, I have to shout out to a dear friend and a colleague, Keller's Bakery. So Sandy Keller, I worked with at Lafayette General, now Auction Lafayette General, for a long time.
oh,
But
wow.
yeah, Keller's, and the amaretto king cake at Keller's was pretty killer.
Oh, that sounds
Oh.
yummy.
Yeah, like spot
Yeah.
on.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm driving back to Louisiana during Mardi Gras to pick up some king cakes. I'm just gonna fill my trunk with them when coming back here.
Mardi Gras in Oklahoma. Like, I'm scratching my head already.
Oh no, you don't understand. I'm popping open my trunk in like a parking lot and I'm selling them for $50 a pop, you know?
You will change people's lives forever. You may want to just prepare to ramp up your distribution.
I'm sales management and at a furniture company, so I'll just have to partner with the company I'm with already. You know, you buy over a certain amount, you get a free king cake with it.
There you go.
Dr. Frazier, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Sin. It's been a blast.
We usually do have a lot of fun. And again, thank you all for listening to this episode of Robinson Ventures Radio. We appreciate it. Take care.